It's 2012 African Cup of Nations time, and in this segment of MTN Football Webcast, we take a look at Group B. Welcome to MTN Football Webcast. I'm your host, Brian Lee. Alongside me, I have Mr. Dwayne DeLocke. And Dwayne, taking a look at this group, we've got one of the favourites in Ivory Coast, as well as Sudan, Angola, and Burkina Faso. Now, looking at what you're wearing today, I take it you think Ivory Coast are definitely favourites to top this group.
Well, to be honest, I'm actually a little split between who's going to go on and claim the title, Brian. But I think, in all honesty, Cote d'Ivoire stand a really, really good chance of going on to win. And why not? You look at the squad that they have assembled. This is a side that can't even include one of the greatest young talents I've seen on the African continent. Souleymane Coulibaly, who absolutely blew everyone away at the Under-17 World Cup. The man that Harry Redknapp was so impressed with. He signed him for Tottenham Hotspur immediately. I mean, this is the player that scored a hat-trick against Brazil's youth team in the World Cup itself last year. Now, in terms of actual player personnel, I mean, look at the squad they've assembled. The Toure brothers, you've got the likes of Solomon Kalou, who in the warm-ups has been absolutely outstanding. They're led, of course, by the great Didier Drogba, who's slowly starting to find his form again at Chelsea after a sort of patch that wasn't quite his greatest, and certainly led some to believe that he was past his best, but he's showing that he's not. You look at their qualifying campaign. This is a team that won 6 out of 6. There was no doubt about how dominant they were in their group. This is a team that has got character, they've got purpose, and they've got the best players in the African continent at the moment. They're ranked number 1 for a reason in Africa, and they're in the top 20 in the world. This team can compete with the best teams in the world on any given day, and you put them up against any African opposition, I reckon they are strong enough to waltz past and beat them thoroughly. They might have a few weaknesses, but to be honest, I say when you look at the attack that they've got, when you look at the quality personnel that they've got, you can't look much further than Cote d'Ivoire for possible winners of this tournament, especially when you consider the likes of Egypt, Cameroon, maybe Nigeria, teams that could readily compete with them that are not playing at this tournament.
Certainly, Dwayne, Ivory Coast have a phenomenal squad at their disposal. If anything, their biggest weakness is between the sticks with Boubacar Bari, their goalkeeper. Not the best for me between the posts, but if you can get past their defence, then maybe you've got a chance. Let's talk about the other 3 teams in this group, Burkina Faso, Angola and Sudan. Which of these are most likely to finish second, and who are some of the star players to watch out for in these respective teams?
Well, certainly in terms of Angola, let's start with them. They're a side that were surprise qualifiers for this African Cup of Nations. I mean, Uganda led the race in their qualifying group throughout the tournament, and somehow Uganda, who needed only 1 point in their last few matches to qualify for the African Cup of Nations, failed to pick it up. Hugely disappointing for the likes of Dennis Onyango, who had such an outstanding qualifying campaign, but this Angolan side made it through. But you go back 6 years, they qualified for the FIFA World Cup ahead of a team like Nigeria. It shocked the world at the time, but what they failed to do is really build on what they had at the time. Remember, that team was led by the likes of Fabrice Akwa. They don't quite have that player at the moment, but they still have the likes of Flavio, and I think the real star player remains the man that was signed once upon a time by Sir Alex Ferguson for Manchester United, Manucho. He's got to be the star player. I think if you look at Sudan, this is a team that for me was most impressive in qualifiers. I mean, you're wearing a Ghanaian jersey, and yes, Ghana were impressive in the qualifiers, but I'll tell you what, they were held by Sudan in Kumasi in the qualifiers, and that gives you an idea of just how strong-willed and certainly the temperament of this Sudanese side, how desperate they were to qualify. Only a second qualification for the African Cup of Nations in the last 36 years, but you look at that sort of qualifying record, and I think it throws you off a little. You think Sudan might not be a team that will be able to qualify. I say differently. This is a side that's got teams in the likes of Al Merreikh and Al Hilal that qualify for at least the mini phases of the CAF Champions League year in and year out. They are some of the strongest teams on the African continent. They've also got a couple of naturalized Nigerians, Stephen Kelechi, most prominent among those. If you look at the quality of players they've got from these 2 clubs, and you combine it with the fact that their Olympic team is starting to show huge character. They, in fact, beat the Ghanaian side in the Olympic qualifiers in the build-up to what was an eventual clean sweep, basically, by the North African sides to go and play in the Olympics in London. But what that shows is the huge young talent that's coming through. So you combine the Olympic team with the Al Merreikh and Al Hilal squads, and Sudan has got a very strong team that are used to playing in African conditions, that are used to playing against African players, and I think they might just be a little bit more prominent than some people expect them to be. In terms of Burkina Faso, though, I think this is where things are really going to get interesting, because most recently the Burkina Faso story has been overshadowed not by the performances of the players, but rather by the coach, Paulo Duarte, the Jose Mourinho of Africa, as he's affectionately known, and some of his wild and crazy antics in charge of the side. Also the fact that they've got a Cameroonian-born player, Irv Zenga, that's been naturalized as a Burkinabe because of his marriage to a Burkina Faso woman. That had Namibia got their tails up, and certainly took the issue to CAF and subsequently to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. But we've not seen anything come of it, and Burkina Faso have been allowed to play in this tournament. Not to overshadow that, though, they've got some of the most dangerous players in the African continent. Mumuni Dagano, bear in mind, was the leading goal scorer not only in Africa, but around the world in qualifying for the 2010 FIFA World Cup. Maybe Burkina Faso didn't manage to qualify for the 2010 FIFA World Cup, but in Mumuni Dagano, they've got a star, they've got a man that can find the back of the net, and this is a man that when you combine with players like Bitropa, who also plays in Europe, I think you've got the ability to find one or two key men up front that can make a difference for this Burkina Faso outfit.
Sounds like second place is certainly up for grabs in this group, Dwayne. But this group gets underway on the 22nd when Cote d'Ivoire hosts Sudan in their opening Group B match.